Folks, I am at a store in Dayton, Ohio called Vacuums and Video Games. I'm here to interview Jaffa, the owner, who I just met. Normally we start these interviews out inside the store, but I pulled up today and we had a little bit of a situation. So Jaffa, what's going on here?
A couple screws broke and fell and shattered, unfortunately. Said you were coming today in 45 minutes before you came. Sign on the ground. I mean, there's always something to take care of.
Hopefully the rest of the store is a little bit more intact than the exterior is. Would you mind giving me a quick tour and kind of talking about the history of the store?
Absolutely.
Holy cow. I have to say, Jaffa, I did not expect this walking in here, especially with a name like Vacuums and Video Games. I kind of expected more of like a mom and pop feel to the shop.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, I'm super curious, how much of your sales are vacuums versus video games? Can you share that?
I mean, the video games and, just anything else is definitely higher. We do a lot more service, though, on vacuums and stuff like that. That's sort of where that's where the money, I guess you could say, is. A lot of people, you buy a $300 vacuum. Do you want to buy another one a year later? Probably not, so they bring it here. Without a doubt. But there's always that question, like, for instance, you sell a box game and you list it accurately, but the guy on the other side doesn't think your condition is accurate.
Yeah.
So then you're in that, area. Then you got to deal with the return. With the amount, yeah.
This is real life, folks. Please hold. Okay, so folks, Jaffa, the owner, that call that he took, he actually had to peace out to go deal with sign stuff. We'll catch up with him a little bit later, but in the meantime, we have Chris, the manager, here to finish the tour and give us some of the store highlights. You've been working here for a total of what, like?
I'd say probably a solid 15 so years.
Oh my gosh, so Chris knows this store like the back of his hand. Can you give us like the rapid fire version of what are some of the coolest sections and items in this place?
Yeah, for sure. Retro stuff, love it. So we got an Atari Jaguar still in the box of arcade, and then basically almost every game for it, close to.
Wow.
64 case. It's a little scattered barren right now. We got some high-end titles, but then right here is probably my favorite part of the 64 case. We've got Sculptor's Cut, complete in box, Conkers, 2 copies of Stunt Racer, Not for Resale Super Mario 64, Bomberman 64, the second one. So it's all types of cool stuff, and then my favorite piece, the 64 DD, which is you don't see those anywhere ever, especially in working condition.
I've only ever seen one before at a convention.
Yes. Through here, SNES stuff, you can tell it's just all types of crazy games in there. We got Zelda sealed in box, and then just all types of loose stuff, Dracula X, Mega Man X3. It's just a really nice collection. Pride ourselves on trying to have the high-end stuff around.
Mm-hmm.
Then NES case, right front and center, you have Little Samson. And then it's a really nice copy. And then our graded 9.2 Final Fantasy with the Nintendo promotion offer. It's a 1 of 1.
Wow.
You don't see that anywhere else, and really don't know how to comp it. So,
one thing that I'm noticing is there are no replacement cases. They're all original cases. Is that a policy of yours?
No, we do use replacement cases if we have to. Some people will bring in a game that's loose to us and then it won't have artwork or anything, so we'll print out artwork and then throw a sticker on that says reprint art. So let me see if I can find an example. Yeah, so what we'll do is we will take the game that's loose, we'll put a sticker on it and reprint the art, and it'll say reprint cover, and then we'll mark it down depending on what the game is.
Okay.
So you'll be paying for the loose disc price, but the game
It seems like a pretty high quality printing still, though.
Oh yeah, no. He actually uses specific paper. He wants it to be and feel as good as it can. Even though it's reprint, but we'll still let you know. But we just don't want it to look bad.
Well, that's great that you're it's reflected in the price and you're being honest with the customer, but it also makes the shelves look so much nicer.
Yeah, you don't want to have a random GameStop case unless we can't print the art for it. We try to prevent that, but how the GameStop cases and those random things people resell to you, they bring it back and it just says GameStop in the title of the game. It doesn't look good on the shelf. You want it to look uniform. You want all the games to look the same. So we pride ourselves on trying to make the store look as good as we can.
So as a 10+ year store manager, what's your perspective on what sets Vacuums and Video Games apart from other local stores?
We pay better. Our prices are fair, and we make sure that we give you the best price possible. We try to make sure that our selection is good, and we also try to make sure that the games are clean and make sure that everything looks nice for you to take home. We test everything, warranty everything. really pride ourselves on just having the best of the best. Like, we try to just make sure the store looks great, everything that you get works, and everything's good.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest. The prices and the selection are top notch. Like, it's not common to run into a store that has this much stuff that isn't super overpriced.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is our prices. Is like our prices are fair and our prices are low. And then if something you see is marked up a little bit and you feel like it's a little overpriced, just bring it to our attention and then we'll look it up and then go from there.
So folks, I've got a ton of spicy questions for Jaffa once he gets back about what it's really like to own a game store like this one. But in the meantime, I'm going to take a look at these shelves and see if we can find something to flip. Now, Jaffa did say that if I'm buying a good bit, he can work a little bit of a bulk discount for me, and this section was one that instantly caught my eye that we've been having trouble staying in stock with on Amazon is the handhelds. For example, like this one right here, the red new 3DS XL, we're pretty close on. We're paying $210 on that. People send this one in a good bit. I don't know why we get higher for this. This one's at $240, so, you know, even at like 15% off, we could pull the trigger on that. We also do weirdly well with DSi consoles. I want to say we're paying in the like high 40s on those, so that might be a section that we can do pretty well with. Folks, this is another area right here for some potential deal making. Wii Sports, for some reason, we cannot keep in stock, but it looks like they've got like 20 plus copies. The big question mark is, I don't know whether this is normally a super fast mover for them. I know at a lot of game stores it is, so they might not be super willing to negotiate. I know right now we're paying 22 a piece on those. They've got them stickered at 30, but if they're moving kind of slow, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the kind of deal that could be mutually beneficial, at least on maybe a few copies. This is another one of those Wii games that we pay really well for because we just can't stay in stock. Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. Looks like they do have a good number of copies here. I believe we are paying, yeah, $17 on these. I believe that might be going down $1 next month. But again, you know, if he's willing to do 20% or so on this, this could be another solid mutually beneficial deal. A lot of people I'll see in the comments saying like, dude, why are you talking about like the money that you're hoping to make on these games right in front of vendors or in front of store owners? And I realized what a lot of people don't understand is we're very much on the same team. Jaffa, I'm going to ask him about later. He's also very much of the mindset of collaborate, don't compete. So that's another thing that I want to ask him about because he cooperates even with local resellers very often. So Jaffa, I know owning a video game store is a career path that a lot of people, it's really easy to romanticize. But what can you tell me about like the day-to-day actual reality of being a game store owner?
I mean, it can be rough. I mean, there's a lot of expenses. And I mean, during certain times of the year, you know, during Christmas, tax time, everything's great. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Then after tax time, you know, a lot of people start selling stuff off, or, you know, there's a big lull, and there's a lot of days that, you know, buy after buy, stuff we have to process. And it's constant. Like, it's awesome seeing stuff coming in. Like, man, I've never seen that.
Yeah.
But after you've done it like 75 consecutive days of like, all right, yep, we got 3 of those now. You know, it does get tiresome a little bit. And
in those slow seasons, does cash flow become an issue too?
I mean, it hasn't, but I mean, it does put stress on us. Like, we were looking, you know, at our numbers. Like, yeah, we had a great day in sales, but we tripled that in buys. And
right,
this store does, I think, a lot of more buying on average than most stores. Just from what I know from other stores that I talk to and I'm friends with. You know, we obviously compare stuff and talk, and we're like, well, what's your numbers looking like, or what's your buys like? And I know in most cases I'm double to triple most stores' buys.
So what do you think it is about this store that sets you so far apart from the others? Because it sounds like both in acquisitions and in sales, you're kind of head and shoulders above the competition. What is it that gets you there?
I don't know if I'd use the term head and shoulders above. I just would say, I mean, we offer the percentages that we offer, even for resellers, is enticing due to the fact of, you know, by the time you pay your fees and deal with the customer on the other end, is it worth that extra 10 to 20% kind of deal? The other thing that a lot of people, we get a lot of good inventory in, because the existing inventory, there's something they want. So they're willing to trade for it to get it, and,
right,
which you can't do that online. I mean, well, I shouldn't say there are some places you can trade in on, but for the most part, you can't get on eBay and say, hey, I want to trade these games for that. So, and it's also in-store, which makes it easier if you're going for a high-end game. I know how I am, you know, if you're getting a box game, you're going to want to see it.
Yeah.
You know, pictures, you know, they work, but, you know, holding it, feeling the, you know, the cardboard, smelling the cardboard, it's a completely different thing. Like, oh, that's a replica.
Yeah.
As soon as you touch it or open it, you know, it's hard to duplicate that by just looking at pictures online. So I think that's probably part of it. I think people got more confidence in buying, you know, a mid-tier expensive game at a store, that if there's a problem, they can come right back and be like, hey, what's going on? Can we do this? Can we fix this? Why isn't this working?
So you're doing a good bit of buying from local resellers who would rather sell to you than do all the work of selling it on their own. Is that like, because there are a lot of stores that don't necessarily like, they see other like local resellers or vendors or other stores more as competition. One thing that I say a lot is collaborate, don't compete. What is it that made you adopt that mentality?
I mean, there's some resellers that you can't work with. I mean, just there's some businesses you can't work with. It just
Right.
depends on the person. And basically, I don't want to compete with them. Like, for the most part, if I'm using price charting and I got a reseller, they can make money just off of where I'm set at. So that works. And, you know, as long as you're not, people don't come in and go, you know, will you take 10% of your value? I mean, that sort of makes it work. And then, like we discussed on the reseller end, I work with other stores because there's certain stuff that they'll be sitting on the tie-in that, you know, it's sort of aged.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll move stuff around. Like,
Yeah.
I'll talk to other stores like, hey, well, let me bring that down here, because I don't want to say we got a following for higher end stuff, but we do move a lot of high end games. I mean, we've gone through, what is it, 3 little Samsons in the last month.
2 DDs.
Yeah, 2 N64 DDs.
Yeah.
2 Kuons. So we sort of, like, other stores will be like, hey, this isn't working for me, but you have this, let's do a trade. And we do that all the time. I've got 3 or 4 stores that I do that with.
What did you have to sacrifice to get the store to this point?
First year, I think me and Rob both worked over 320 days.
Jeez.
12 hours or more. But that's, you know, and I'm sure people are going to say, you know, I've got a son, wife, outside life, and, you know, people are going to say, you're sacrificing that. And I'm like, it's only a sacrifice if it doesn't work. Long term, you might lose a year or two, but if things work out, you gain the back end. So my goal with this store is, you've met Chris, I'm hoping I'm only going to be here a couple hours every few days, and the store basically will run itself. That's what we're trying to establish this store as, is basically to where it runs itself. Have a setup that, you know, everybody knows it. Everyone, this goes here. We do this with this. This shelf's for done stuff. These are controllers that are untested. Next time you plug in a 360, hit this. You know, it will run itself with the right setup. And that's what we're trying to do. And we've gotten close. But like I said, I underestimated the trade-ins. The trade-ins, like, we'll have this store looking nice, and then 4 seconds later, it'll look like a flea market blew up in here. And it's just, and I can't complain. I mean, the inventory is what makes the store go.
Sure. One thing that I always like to ask people is, on this channel, we're very money positive. What can you tell me about the kinds of numbers that this store does?
I mean, this first year that me and him have been partners, it's somewhere in the 650, 675 range.
Oh, wow.
Which sounds good, but me and him basically don't take pay. We pay the employees, and everything goes into the store.
Wow.
And then, like, the way I planned it out, like, we do get pay, but we're not taking much. Basically, the store gets the majority till it builds to a point where it withstands the stuff, and it's about there. Like, I feel this store's on the threshold of where it will support itself. And that's the point we had to get to. You can't start something and then pull from it right out of the gate, because then, you know, you get into trouble with depleted inventory. And if somebody doesn't have something to trade against, they're not going to bring it to you. They're going to go to somebody else.
Right. So you want to keep the cash flow healthy at all stages. So one thing that I have kind of struggled with in the past of, how do you know when is the time to start taking money?
You don't, because there's always that next deal. Like, I mean, just last week, not trying to boast or brag or anything, but we spent $13,500, and it's stuff you don't see. Like, we had an almost complete North American Dreamcast collection come as 20 games short.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a thing that comes in and you're like planning for. I mean, you got sales tax, your lease, sign fell off the building. I mean,
You got to fix the sign.
It's just a constant rotation of, you got to keep the business bank account healthy enough to withstand. You're going to have shots at you constantly. And most businesses fail on the principle of they don't plan for the worst case scenario. And when that happens, the money's not there to cover it. And that's when things start going south quick. You're like, well, we'll just pull this out and we'll get rid of this. And then, you know, customer service starts sliding. Let's cut an employee.
Right.
And that's our biggest thing is customer service. I mean, I cannot put that ahead of anything else. Even if our inventory was, you know, well below average, I feel our customer service alone brings people in. Like, our turnaround time on repairing consoles is 1 to 3 days.
Wow.
And unless you bring it on like a Friday, then basically 1 to 3 business days. But that's what we, you know, if there's a problem with the game, you know, it's got our sticker on it, but you don't have your receipt, we're still going to take care of it. We know it's ours. You know, it's just certain things that businesses don't do anymore that, you know, people hold a grudge.
What are some of the other business principles that have served you best over the course of the last 15 years?
Just flat out honesty. I mean, customers that come in, you know, obviously we have people bringing games and they'll question our pricing. That monitor is that high, so I can flip it around and go, these are the last 5 solds. This is what price charting has at. These are the last 5 eBay sold listings.
So you're upfront with how much you're hoping to get for an item, the spread that you're hoping to make, and people are generally understanding that, you know, it's a business and you're trying to make money.
Right. And like I said, at the margins that we do, I mean, I don't know where we fall with other stores, I mean, comparatively, but I know most stores are like 30-40% max is their cash or trade value.
Yeah, that's very standard. I mean, and if you talk a larger chain, like, you know, GameStop or a Game Exchange, it's usually going to be significantly lower.
But, and then again, if you look at those models, and that's what I don't, you know, that's sort of what I look at. So I took GameStop, for instance. They're not doing well.
Yeah.
And there's specific reasons why. They've made a chain that is identical everywhere you go, and they're running the same product, and it's already oversaturated, and there's no draw. Like, what's your reason unless, you know, you don't have a pull anymore?
Yeah.
There's no retro, there's nothing, you know, yeah, obviously they drop cool limited run or whatever stuff that comes in, but other than that, and then if you want to trade something in, you're going to get murdered.
Right. They've got a selection that's maybe 10 to 20% of what you have here, and they're paying way worse.
Right. And that's why I didn't base my model anywhere close to that. I mean, that's why it was sort of easy for me to establish a store relatively quick. I mean, this is a year. The 2 principles that I used of we pay more, and like I said, 50% is our low end. You get a little Samson, I paid full retail on it.
Wow.
Just because I want it. I've taken losses on games just to have it. I mean, it just works out. You know, people like coming to stores seeing stuff, or they're like, hey, I could have got like the DD from overseas, but then they're like, when's it going to get here? Is it going to be intact? You know, and it just makes things easier, but it makes them a lifetime customer too. And if they ask me to get them something, chances are I'm going to know somebody that can get it.
So when people ask you, should I get into this industry? Should I start my own video game store? What do you recommend it?
No, not at all.
Okay, why not?
Even a little bit. I mean, it's cutthroat. I mean, if it was a different situation, it wasn't me that came here, it would have been over very quickly, because most businesses, if they're smart, are not going to let another business set up. They're going to, for instance, if I was another business and I saw me coming, I would have checked what I was paying And since I was already established, I'd have gone another 20% above just to
make it hard for the competition.
Well, I mean, you can't do anything if you're basically suffocating because you're not getting inventory.
Right, because they're not going to have the cash flow that you do. And would you say that that's the case for like most parts of the industry, that like if you're trying to just get started in a local market that has established players, it's going to be especially hard for you?
It is, and there's just with the online sales anymore, I mean, it's just hard in general. Everyone's going to come in your store with a phone and they're going to price check. Like I said, that's what's hard to deal with. You know, everyone is going to price check everything. It's easier to get stuff online, and there's a fine line there. There's 10 guys like you.
Right.
I mean, and you're not, like, you're more streamlined, but there's guys that are like me, you know, they will just go through and take they want everything, and they leave no crumbs. And there's 20 of them everywhere you go, especially in
You mean when you're looking for inventory?
Yeah, like you used to be able to go garage sailing, and it was just whoo.
Yeah.
20 SNES games. You go to a garage sale now, there's 7 guys like clawing at those NES games.
Yeah.
At least in this area that I've seen. Like, we've done the Route 40 sale, and the amount of people I run into that I know, and it's just like, so which way you going?
Yeah.
And then you're playing the game of like trying to outrun them, like go a couple miles ahead, and then you see them pass. And
Right.
that's just sort of how the gaming industry is right now.
Well, and people ask me sometimes if I had to start over, whether I would go to video games again if I didn't have the Amazon edge. And I usually say, honestly, I'd probably go the opposite way and get into something super boring that nobody cares about, right? That there's not going to be a ton of competition for, like hardware, you know, like door hinges or something super boring. Because there is a lot to be said for that. Yeah.
The 2 years after I left, 2 to 5 years that we did online sales, I was doing Rock Band and Guitar Hero. And that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And nobody was doing it. Like, you could go anywhere, a Goodwill, and it's like $1.99 for a guitar. Drive down the street, there's a drum set, a guitar laying there.
Yeah.
And I was just, accumulating it. And then I realized on eBay, well, here in Ohio, no value. But they can't get this stuff in New York, California, Texas, Florida. So that's how we sort of started, and then we got more and more popular because we were refurbishing it, and it turned into an actual business. Like,
yeah,
we were
with the unsexy stuff that no one else wanted.
And then that turned its head rapidly. Now you go everywhere, everybody's guitar.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, like, if I were to start over again today, I think I'd be more likely to compete with you on the vacuum side than on the video game side, because that's another thing that, like, no one's like, I want to own a vacuum business, Mom. You know?
Well, that's a funny thing. Like the Mealies and the Rainbows, like that's
what are, I don't know what that is.
They're older vacuums, and you can pick them up at Goodwills and stuff. But online, they average $200 to $400. I mean,
and no one would know.
Right. I mean, eBayers.
Sure.
I mean, that's, like I said, it's a thing. I mean.
And there's also decent money in parting them out too, right? Like their individual parts can be worth a lot of money.
That's what I did. Like our eBay, we did tools. The tool itself wasn't worth anything to me.
Yeah.
I mean, some occasions obviously snap on certain brands, but the battery and charger, which are smaller and lighter, was worth more for me to piece it out. And we did that all the time. I mean, that was like our bread and butter.
Yeah.
Batteries, chargers, weird stuff. That's what eBay was for us. We found the niches, the holes, the gaps that I didn't have to worry about who I was competing against. Like when I went to Goodwill auctions, like I don't know if you're familiar with the Cincinnati one, but they do big like gondolas, and everybody for themselves, live bidding, in-person bidding, and I could bid confidently because I knew what guys were doing what. And then at the end of the day, the video games that they got, we worked out a deal on the back end. So I was getting what I needed. They got, I'd let them go through what I didn't want. They'd get what they wanted. And it worked well. And that's how I started networking. And those same people are the same people I deal with today.
What advice do you have for someone who is just starting out in video games or in collectibles in general, and they're trying to get their feet under them, they're scrappy? What do you tell them?
have good people around you.
Mm.
I mean, the people you have around you is going to be what defines how it turns out. Because if you're known in the community as the guy that's, you know, unsavory, let's say, or you know, willing to cut you for $1, it's going to be short-lived. I mean, it travels fast, and if you're fair and easy to work with, you're going to get more and more people. I mean, what's the old rule? Somebody has a bad experience, they tell 3 people. But if somebody has a good experience, you're lucky if they say something to 1 person.
Right.
That's sort of how it goes in this business. You will be well known at some convention in 5 minutes.
So true. And folks, this is the deal that we ended up coming away with. If any of you guys are one-up users, these are some of the games that we do pay the best for that we ended up doing a little bit of a deal on for $1,100 in total. Jaffa, thanks a bunch again for having me out. It's been a pleasure.
It was awesome.